Hi, we're going to take a minute now to look at Miss Melissa Schlabach's second grade units of study and how they published in local community spaces and digitally. Ms. Schlabach teaches at an elementary school in Bastrop that is in a particularly rural location where there aren't as many close by community spaces. And really, she felt like her families for this first unit of study might uh, um, be more likely to attend the poetry celebration if they were in the school. And so she decided to have her poetry celebration in her classroom around the holidays when she knew parents would be coming already for their celebration. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about her unit just before we get to the publication, because I think that this idea of publishing poetry is a challenge for teachers. If we don't self-identify as poets, it can be very hard to teach a unit of study on poetry in a really authentic way. One of the first things that Melissa and I did together, later on if you have a chance to look at these slides, they're great as far as how she got her writing workshop classroom set up and going strong. I'm going to click forward here to the mentor text. One fun thing that we did together with her team was to go to the library and just start taking books off the shelves. We went to the poetry section of her school's library, and we started looking specifically for poems that were in a variety of topics that might inspire her writers to think of their own topics for their poetry. Also, we looked for poems in a variety of forms that we didn't want just to have rhyming poems. And actually, we kind of avoided a lot of rhyming poems because we know that when young authors try to write poetry, they often get held up thinking about rhyming so much that their intention is skewed and that they can't always stick to their purpose and their original message when they are worrying too much about trying to find a word that rhymes. And so we tried to find a lot of books that introduced students to a variety of poets and forms and topics and non-rhyming poems, more free verse poems. We also thought about what were our goals for students in thinking about sensory language, what kinds of skills we wanted them to learn. We looked at the standards in Texas and which aspects of poetry we knew we were going to be teaching students. And so we looked through this text to find good examples, great examples of engaging poems that could model that type of author's craft for students. And so you can see that evidence here in their writing. This process writing that they did where they were using their page in creative ways like poets do, those space, either long, one word on each line, or whether the lines were longer. This student wrote about his mom's coffee, and this is kind of the steam coming up from the coffee. A lot of sensory language in there. You can see him drafting that here. By displaying this variety of poetry, Miss Schlabach was pushing back on this idea that we need to give students a formula, like they have to all write cinquain, or they have to all write couplets for poetry. We can teach students a lot of different forms of poetry and then give them choice about which forms really fit their message best and their wording and their craft as an author and their voice. And you can see really the students' voices came out. If you have time to take a look here, the authors, many of them were brave and decided to get up into the author's chair and read their poetry aloud for an audience, really owning that oral tradition that poetry has, which is often performed. And I think documenting this process is really important for Melissa also to be able to share with her colleagues the stages that she took to get her students to produce the amazing poetry that they did. I'm going to look now at her second semester unit where she switched gears and did a unit on nonfiction, on informational texts. And one thing I loved that she did is, even though at the end the idea was to publish digitally and to share with a class, they actually ended up pairing with a class in the Ukraine, a pen pal project through Bunsey Buddies and Skype. She had them do the revision in hard copy in little booklets, and we'll see those in a minute. I love this part here where she asked students, what do you want to know more about? What do you know a lot about? And what do you think So all these different kind of questions that came up. For especially looking at this question, what do you know a lot about? That when kids are writing informational texts, starting with what they know about, have experience with, and care about is really important. That we're not just pushing them to research a topic that we have provided for them, that we've chosen for them. That a lot of the research can happen in primary sources, through experience, through interviews, through observations, and this is really important research that authors engage in when they're revising that. You can see in a minute that Ms. Schlabach's second graders also did. Look at this great chart they've done here. They really broke down the text features of nonfiction. They paid attention to mentor texts. Here they've started mapping out their topics and also using books as references. You've got some more videos in here that I hope you guys will take a look at later on. And also their process here of really mapping out. You can see that they're using, on this next page, all kinds of text features. They've got bulleted lists and subtitles and illustrations and tags or captions, labels, table of contents. They wrote about, I love this one here, noodles. This author wrote about all the different types of spaghetti that she loves. Here's the tomato sauce page. Here, this child wrote about cheerleading, and here about jellyfish. So it's just a real variety of topics. And then they moved into their digital publications. And here, Ms. Schlabach is really advocating for the importance of kids learning how to compose digitally and create digital compositions for authentic audiences. And so you can see how she did really intentional lessons with them about not overwhelming the reader with too many images, a good balance of image and text, images that support the text or the message. I love this graphic here. Again, a variety of topics. Some students included audio of their voices reading their text. So by documenting her work in this way, Melissa was really able to share with her colleagues, with her administrators, with parents, the process of creating informational texts that are on topics that students care about and know about, and are not assigned by the teacher. I want to go back and let you know that also, to see all of the second grade's full bunsies, you can go to this Bunsie board. And what you'll notice if we hover over these icons, you see this 3 thumbs up here. Well, Melissa sent her class's bunsies to another teacher on the team, and those third graders were able to get on and comment on the second graders' bunsies. And the third graders had actually also created informational digital texts, and so they had mentor texts from their peers as well as from published authors. So I hope that you'll take some more time to look at how Ms. Schlabach and her second graders really honored the writing process and student agency and autonomy in a writing workshop classroom.